Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel, Life According to Ivan. My name is Ivan Cano, your local El Paso realtor. Today, I wanted to make a video discussing new construction homes, specifically geared more towards the first-time home buyer and why, given the current incentives that are being offered by some builders, it makes new construction homes really hard to ignore, but there are some pros and cons that we'll be discussing. But before we get into that, as always, if you like the content that you see on this channel, please go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel tremendously. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in El Paso, please go ahead and reach out to me. The contact information is down below. Set up a call with me and we can go over your specific situation more in depth, and I'm always happy to help. But before we go ahead and get started with the video, as always, life is good. Always make it count. Okay, everyone, so let's go ahead and get into the video and why specifically new construction right now in late 2024, it's hard to ignore given the incentives that are currently being offered by many builders. The reason being, and especially this is more applicable again to any buyers, but I want to focus on why it would help tremendously in the case for new or first-time home buyers or VA buyers. The reason being is that the incentives that are currently being offered by builders can bring down your cash to close because they pay for closing costs and then some. So you can use the extra money that covers, first of all, it'll cover your closing costs, which is help, tremendous help. That's being offered by most, if not all, builders right now. But then on top of that, some of them are aggressively offering uh, even more cash back, if you will, or incentives or concessions that will help buy down your interest rate, or you can put that money back in your pocket after closing to help, with landscape, etc. Whatever you want to do with it. Essentially, it's cash back in your pocket after purchasing, which can offset the down payment if you're a first-time home buyer. The money that you brought in for down payment, etc. So it can be used in a variety of different ways, really just sitting down and doing the math. But again, that's what the whole video is going to be about, because again, it's just one of those things that it's hard to ignore versus resale right now. And we'll go ahead and get into the pros and cons. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the pros. And the first pro I want to talk about, and again, I already kind of mentioned and alluded to it, is the incentives right now that are being offered help bring down tremendously your cash to close. And again, that just helps tremendously. But I want to kind of focus on why that's important to first-time home buyers or VA buyers, etc. But really first-time home buyers. And I don't want to necessarily make this a huge proponent just due to the fact that, to be honest, first-time home buyers may just not have as much cash to close as other buyers. Not only that, it's just overall you may have the cash. This may not sound something like that would apply to you, but the reason why this is important is because, again, if it lowers your cash to close, no matter what kind of buyer you are, you can use that money for other items, buying furniture, finishing the landscape in the backyard, you name it. It's hard to ignore for any buyers, but more specifically, if you're a first-time home buyer and you're already kind of limited with funds and cash to close, this is a tremendous help because, again, you can just kind of use the incentives and then reallocate some of the cash that you did have to other items that come along with, buying a house. Again, just off the top of my head, buying furniture. And again, I am not just speaking as a realtor, which again, that's what I'm doing right now. As a realtor, this is why I'm breaking it down and making this video. But I can tell you, I have firsthand experience with this because, me and my family, we bought our first house many, many years ago, 14, I think now to be exact. And we bought new construction because it made sense at the time. So it's not just, the opinion of a realtor. It's just I have firsthand experience on this, and this is why I feel so passionate about this. But, again, cash to close and the incentives that are currently being offered will basically just reduce the amount of cash you need to bring to closing or offset it. And again, you could just, if you already have the cash, great, you can repurpose that cash, like I said, for other items. And if you don't happen to have the cash, well, this is just, makes it that much easier to kind of get into a house, especially for first-time home buyers, like I said. And it's, not just first-time home buyers, but VA buyers. I mean, you could literally sign on a house and put money back in your pocket, which I mean, I love doing. I've done that multiple times for my military clients, and it's always a great feeling. But let's go ahead and get into the second. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into pro number two, and that is that these incentives, for the most part, across a variety of builders, are being offered on move-in ready homes, which again will tie into one of the cons. That most people have is when I speak with clients is, well, I don't want to wait for my house to be built. Well, good news. The thing is that these incentives mostly are being applied to move-in ready homes. The reason being, these builders want to move these homes from inventory, just go ahead and get them sold and closed, because then they can just turn around and repurpose those funds and start building other homes. So that's the reason they're doing it. So again, there's no wait. But looking into that, these homes are new. That means there's no really need for buyers to put in money to upgrade finishes, etc., because most of these homes offer modern amenities and finishes, which is a great thing, especially, like I said, geared towards more first-time home buyers, etc., which may or may not be limited for cash. But again, it's just something that you don't have to go ahead and do yourself. With a resale, you might have to fix some things, upgrade some things, update some things. It's just one of those things. But again, we'll kind of come back to that later in one of the cons, because there again, it's pros and cons. But that's pro number two is they're move-in ready and they're modern. So that just helps tremendously without not having to spend money to update or upgrade things or repair things, which will go ahead and segue into, pro number three, and we'll get into that. Okay, everyone. So pro number three, lower overall cost of maintenance and lower overall cost of ownership. And again, this is not just coming from me as a realtor. And again, my background is in accounting, so I'm a bean counter. That's the way my brain works. But I can tell you firsthand, as a new construction homeowner myself, yes, I have direct firsthand experience. And I'll give you guys an example. Most new construction homes, if not all, they're going to be more energy efficient. So what does that mean? You are going to spend less on utilities. And I can tell you firsthand, my parents' home, I have direct examples of 14 years of data that I can, compare and give you guys feedback. I've owned our home for 14 years, coming up, actually more, I think now we're past 14 years. But, in the same amount of time, in those 14 years, my parents' house was built, I believe, in the 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. And their cost of ownership, meaning utilities, repairs, etc., have been much more. Again, and their house is great. They haven't had any issues. It's just the reality is it's an older home, so their utilities are more, and they've had to replace more items in the home in the same amount of time. Knock on wood, we've been very blessed with our home. We have not had issues and or, really anything go wrong with it. So our cost of ownership has been significantly less than if we would have bought a resale, home like my parents, that same age. It's just less. So as a first time home owner, home buyer and owner, this helps tremendously because again, most of the time, at least I was not in the same financial position when we bought our home as I am today. So that was a huge help because again, lower cost of ownership. Why? Because for the first year, most all builders, I want to say, are going to have a warranty, which is basically bumper to bumper, if you will. They take care of any and most items that come up within your first year, which is great because again, that's just something less that you have to worry about as a first-time homeowner. It just helps ease you into that home ownership role. Like I said, if you're a first-time home buyer, so that just helps, and then it helps your pocketbook because it's repairs that you're not going to have to do. Again, if you bought a resale home, those repairs can add up, especially in the beginning when you move in. So it's just overall your cost of ownership is less. And another big thing that I think people don't realize is your insurance costs on a new construction home are going to be typically less versus a resale. And again, that's firsthand experience. And I have multiple clients that, I've seen that as well. Their insurance quotes are less with new construction homes. So overall, as a package, your total cost of ownership is going to be less with a new construction home. But, we'll go ahead and get into the next pro. Okay, everyone. So the fourth and final pro that I want to get into, and again, it's just so important but especially, like I said, for first time home buyers, whether you're VA or FHA, but just first time homeowners, they call them homeowners, not buyers, because eventually you will become a homeowner. But it's the flexibility with the incentives being offered by these builders that, they give a lot of leeway to lenders to help make it work for whatever scenario you're in. Like I said, I mentioned those earlier, but it gives buyers and their lenders freedom to apply the concessions as they see fit, whether you want a lower down payment, because of interest, or you just want that cash to reallocate it towards other things that are going to come up. Like I said, furniture is a big one off the top of my head, just firsthand experience. I remember that was the next big purchase after buying a home. So if you don't want to eat up your savings, especially like on a resale where you have to bring in more cash to close, you can repurpose that cash to buy other things. Or if you just want a lower down payment, not just a lower down payment, a lower overall payment, your lender can use that to bring down your monthly mortgage. Again, it's just that flexibility just makes a lot more sense. And like I said, it may or may not, given your certain situation. Again, we can always discuss on a one-to-one, but overall, it's hard to ignore right now. Just when you lay out and do the numbers, it's hard to ignore that as a first-time home buyer. Again, it's just once you do the numbers side by side, new construction versus resale, it's hard to ignore. Doesn't mean it's right for everybody, but it's definitely worth a look. But now we can go ahead and get into the cons. Okay, so now let's get into the cons. And there is, con number one, which I think is a big one. It's, again, firsthand experience with this, but also as a realtor with my clients, the biggest con, and it's kind of multifaceted, it's going to be location or lack thereof. And this is, like I said, multifaceted, and we'll get into it. But location one being new construction obviously is going to be built in areas outside of normally, outside of established neighborhoods. So the limited area of where you can find new construction is going to be a big con. Again, in El Paso, there's multiple communities, but they're going to be further out from central locations, and this may matter if your commute is something that matters to most people, like it does. Again, firsthand experience, when we first bought our home, my commute was about 35 minutes versus living closer to work back then, 14 years ago. Keep that in mind. But and something I want to bring up, I know we're discussing cons, but on top of that, a pro to that is that it's usually in up and coming neighborhoods. So the propensity for your property to go up, your equity because of home values going up in new construction areas is higher than that of established neighborhoods. Again, that's something that we can go down that rabbit hole in another video. But again, firsthand experience, yeah, that's kind of what we did. It was a little further out than I wanted to be, but I'm glad I listened to my wife. So gentlemen, listen to your wife's intuition. Usually they're right. But yeah, I'm glad we did. Even though it was a little further than I wanted to be from work back then when we bought our house, I'm very glad we did, because it turned into one of those communities that is in very high demand. Again, so we kind of saw our equity rise over the years, and again, I'm really happy with the decision we made. But again, when we were shopping, I got to be honest. Being further out than where I wanted to be was obviously a con, and it's to me, it's one of the biggest cons. Again, another one being that obviously the limited areas of where new construction homes are being built ties into the location. So again, just to go over that, the biggest con, and again from firsthand experience and as a realtor, is going to be location, just due to the fact that if you commute, it may be farther than you want to be. But there's also some long-term benefits to that. Like I said, we can get into that in a different video, but we'll go ahead and get into con number two. Okay, so con number two, which again is another big one, is the lack of price flexibility. Meaning that, unlike resale homes, the price usually is not as negotiable on new construction homes as it is on a resale home. And, again, this is multifaceted. So generally speaking, new construction homes are going to be higher in price per square foot than the resale counterparts. And that's just, the name of the game. Not always, but generally speaking, that's going to be it. So on top of that, like I said, that's con number two, is just the limited price flexibility or negotiation. Not always, but for the most part, and the price per square foot is higher. But again, if we're talking long term, and again, first hand experience, when we bought our house, funny, we were being told don't buy new construction, and it's usually higher per price. But again, fast forward 14 years, I'm super glad we did. But that's definitely going to be con number two, just the higher price per square foot and the limited ability to negotiate the price. So definitely that's con number two. And we can go into con number three, which isn't really applicable in the specific situation that I'm going to, but I'll explain more. Okay, so con number three, which I did want to get into, even though it doesn't really apply to the topic that we've been discussing, with the incentives, the current incentives being offered, I did want to bring it up, and that is, construction delays or issues or having to wait for your new construction home to be built. However, what we've been discussing is the incentives that are currently being offered, and again, they're usually on move-in ready homes, so it doesn't apply, but I wanted to bring that up anyway. Having to wait, because again, first-hand experience, we did have to wait for ours to be built, so that's just a con for most people. I understand, I've been there, but it doesn't really apply because what we've been discussing is the incentives currently offered on move-in ready homes by these builders. But that is a con number three that I wanted to bring up, is just construction delays or issues or having to wait for your new construction home to be built. But yeah, con number three. Okay, guys, so just to quickly recap the whole video, really the key takeaways here are: number one, the incentives that are currently being offered late 2024 are really hard to ignore, especially for first-time home buyers, VA buyers, because it can make the difference or make home ownership a possibility that maybe it wasn't before. But again, each individual case is going to vary. We can go over it, but again, it's just something that I've seen time and time again. It could be the difference maker. And once you do the numbers side by side, it ends up making a lot more sense to many people, just for different variety of reasons that we discussed and gave examples of. Key takeaway number two, though, is going to be the downside. Usually you may end up being further out from where you want to be, especially if you commute, just given that comes with the territory of new construction home. Not always, but again, you're just a little further out from everything, which again, we discussed long term, though, that may not be a con. It can very quickly turn into a pro. And key takeaway number three, yes, even though these incentives may help tremendously when it comes to buying a home, the downside to that is that the price flexibility, meaning the ability to negotiate, is just not the same. It may not be there compared to a resale home. But and those are just quickly three takeaways from the video. As always, thank you for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said, it helps tremendously. But if you have any comments on what we went over in this video, please let me know down below in the comments. I'm more than happy to discuss. If you find yourself in a situation where you're looking to buy, in the next year or so or less, please go ahead and reach out. Links on how to contact me below. Reach out anytime. I'm more than happy to go over it with anybody, and we can go more in detail and kind of specifically tailored to you and your situation. Again, buying a home is a huge first step in life. I never forget that it's a huge life event for people, and I'm always happy to help. But as always, life is good. Always make it count.